أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. I congratulate everyone that this Saturday we'll be remembering the Wiladat and birthday anniversary of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. Congratulate all of you, and especially the ladies and the mothers, inshallah. May their day be blessed. When we look at the life of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam and we want to investigate and know more about someone who has such an important status in Islam, how can one get to know a religious or holy figure better? There are four ways. One is by investigating and looking at verses of the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran introduces us to many different individuals. For example, the wife of Pharaoh. The status of her is in the Quran, for example. The fact that she helped Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and that the fact that she desired, even though it was her own husband that was the Pharaoh, desired for the Munji and Savior to come to overthrow him. She is one lady, for example, that is mentioned in the Holy Quran. Or sometimes you have other ladies like Sayyidah Maryam, the mother of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, mentioned in the Quran. How many verses are about Sayyidah Fatima in the Quran? The Quran does not say her name specifically, but there are many verses that all Muslims say are for her, that are about her. For example, the verse of purification, introducing Sayyidah Fatima or Ahlul Bayt as being those who are thoroughly purified, meaning those who are infallible. So Quran talks about Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam as being ma'asum when you look at the narrations. Two, when you see verses of, for example, Mubahila 3:61, the Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam is introduced as part of the Nisa, the ladies that have been brought to make dua for the prophethood of Rasulullah, to show that Islam is the correct religion when challenged by the Christians. Maybe there are 70, 80 Christians that were praying, and you'd assume that the more people you'd bring, the better, the more of a chance you'd win, right? So you would say, bring everyone, bring all the holy ladies, for example. But in this instant, Rasulullah, even though it says Nisa, which is women in plural, only brought one. Because as Hayatullah Makaram Shirazi says, one of her alqab and one of her titles is Al-Batul. Batul meaning she is separated. She is separated from all the ladies. No one can compare to her. So therefore she is brought as An-Nisa because she's sufficient. If all the ladies, imagine that time, all the Muslim ladies were to make dua. That is one dua on one side. Then you have Sayyidah Fatima, the dua of one would outweigh all the du'as of all the ladies at that time, because she's Batul. Nobody can compare with her. Please recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We learn in Surah Al-Insan about her behavior, Quran, from verses 8 and 9, around those verses, that there are those who they feed, the miskin, the asir, for example, the yatim when they come, the orphan, the poor, the captive. And Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, according to traditions, mentions in the traditions that she gave when she was fasting, gave the food of herself, gave the food of her children to the poor. So this is one way, and we're not limiting. Of course, Quran even has a chapter for Sayyidah Fatima, that from the Sha'n and Nazul, some say, how do you know? Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar is about Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. The fact that inna sha'naka huwa al-abtar, your enemies will be abtar, they won't have a progeny. From that context and from the Sha'n and Nazul, when Rasulullah's son died, this surah came. Because his son died, now we have given you, Rasulullah, inna a'tainaka, which is mufrad, mukhatab, you, Rasulullah, we have given you al-kawthar, we have given you khayru kathir, abundance of good. Your enemies, their progeny will not survive. But the Saadat and Sayyids and the progeny who is connected from Risalat to Imamat is through Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. And we'll mention that one of her titles, inshallah, is Abiha, meaning mother of her father, because one of the instances she connects Risalat, prophethood, to the Imams, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. The Imams come from Sayyidah Fatima. Let's recite another salawat for her. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So Quran introduces in many occasions. And if you ask for any other lady in the Holy Quran, any other Muslim lady in the Quran, you won't find any other of these verses for them. She's immaculate. She is khayr kathir. Allah has given her. She is, for example, mubahila an-nisa. Her prayer is worth all the prayers of all the ladies. And other verses, some say there's 100 verses of Quran about Sayyidah Fatima. We'll say another one of them being maybe that you haven't heard about her life. Why? But you need the sha'n and nuzul. Say this verse is about Sayyidah Fatima. So the first way to understand someone is through Holy Quran and its bayan, the explanation. The second way to understand a religious figure, an important figure, is through the narrations, the ahadith. The ahadith, they introduce us to that individual, and tonight we'll be going over some of the narrations from the Imams. Every Imam has a hadith about Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. Every 12 Imams, even the Imam of the age, has a hadith saying about the maqam and manzalat and position of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. The third way is that person's seerah, their behavior, how they lived. You go through the historical books and you see how did they pray. A lot of the seerah and behavior is from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He introduces, how was my wife? How was she? A lot of the seerah and behavior is from Rasulullah. A lot of the seerah and behavior, for example, is from Imam Hassan alayhi salam. My mother used to do this, we'll mention this. And the fourth is the sayings of the ulama. Some of the sayings of the ulama sometimes surprise you. For example, and I believe it is the scholar from his Ahlul Sunnah, from the book of Ruhul Ma'ani, the author of this book, he has actually said it himself, and he doesn't like Shias. He's one of the Sadat that doesn't like Shias, but he likes the Imams, he likes Ahlul Bayt, but he doesn't like Shias. He says that Suratul Insan is one of the only surahs, he says this, I'm not quoting, so some Aqwal ulama says one of the, because it is, he says actually this is the surah of Sayyidah Fatima. He as a Sunni alim said this is the surah of Sayyidah Fatima. Surah Al-Insan, the one who has the verse of It'am. It says because of respect of her, because she is Insiya Huriya, because she is the real example of the perfect human being, Allah doesn't bring examples of other Huris in this chapter. He's a Sunni alim. He says that because of respect of Sayyidah Fatima, the topic of Huris are not inside this surah, which is a Sunni alim. So let's get into the narrations and let's get into investigating the life of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam through the hadith. If you want to hear this, please recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The first, what I want to start with is actually a verse of Quran, and that is this verse. It's a very famous verse, but many of you do not know this is one of the instances for Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. Ala Imran 191. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. And they say this, ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا. And those who, they remember Allah standing, sitting on their sides, and they give thought to the creation of the heaven and the earth, and they say, God, you haven't created this in vain. You haven't created this entire creation aimlessly. They say that this, one instance of this, was when Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, Imam Ali as well as an instance of this, even though they were not married then. When they did hijrah, they were looking, imagine when you have gone through the deserts, you look at the skies, especially, that you have a clear image of how many stars and how many galaxies and everything that exists in the universe, to some extent, the visible universe, for us. And you say that, Allah, you haven't created this aimlessly. What a vast creation. Some of the scientists, if you ask them what is one of the most intriguing things about space, they say the possibility that space is endless. The possibility. They used to say we have a billion galaxies with a billion stars each. Now they're saying we have a trillion, for example, galaxies with a trillion stars each. And maybe it's possible it's endless. So this is one instance of the knowledge from Quran and the reflection that Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam has when it comes to the creation of Allah. In one of the books that we're going over, today we went over and we started a theology discussion, just Theology 101. And it's more for reverts, but whoever wants to join can. One of the benefits of being a monotheist compared to an atheist or someone who doesn't realize God is that a monotheist looks at the creation of Allah with detail. Would you agree with me? That if, for example, I told you, I give you a book. I say, hey, read this book. And I tell you that the author of this book was a very wise person. He's actually won many prizes. He's very knowledgeable, was a genius for his age, for his time. Would you read this book in detail? Would you look at it with more thought or not? Yes. But if I told you, for example, I have a letter or a book written by a third grader, a normal third grader, for example, the spelling's off and, it's a book, you would look at it and say, oh, it's cute, it's nice, all the misspelling, the handwriting can barely read. You wouldn't pay much attention to it. So when you know a book is from an author who is, for example, very knowledgeable, you study that book because you know that every word in that sentence in that book has a meaning, has a deep meaning. So in the same way, Ayatollah Maikar Shirazi says this in his book of theology, says that creation is like a book. And every design and every creation is a book. And once you are a monotheist and muwahid, and you know that Allah has created this, Allah who is all-powerful, all-wise, has all knowledge, has created this, then you will reflect and look at science differently. You look and study science. It's very, shame for us right now that Muslims do not have the most amount of inventions, even though in the golden age of Islam, many times the inventions were from Middle East or from Muslim lands. Because that monotheist looks, and I think maybe if yourselves, when you see your own life, when you see you are more reflective and you're more religious, you come to the conclusion that you have a better connection with the creation, and you really look at it as a sign of God. Quran mentions this, خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, the creation of the heavens, the earth is, all these things, and the fulk, even the ship that goes through the seas, they are all ayatullah, they are all signs of God. So the monotheist, the muwahid, should be the one investigating and being amazed at the creation. Some of the scientists say if the earth were to spin a little too fast, there'd be too much wind in earth. If it were to rotate a little slower, there'd be too much heat. There'd be too much cold at nighttime if it was too slow. Everything is balanced. Even planets, for example, like Jupiter, that are guarding us from so many meteorites. If it was placed a little bit different, it would block the meteorites of another planet, for example. So all of this is perfectly created to give life on earth. The separation from us and the sun, if we're too close, what would happen? If we're too far. Even other planets, their alignment, how they are, is to protect us. The atmosphere that we have to protect us. All these things need to exist. I remember once I went to Arizona and there's a good Shia scholar, a good Shia professor there. He works very hard in his community. He wrote this book that they call the Bible of photosynthesis that they teach in colleges. He was saying, as an expert in photosynthesis, he says, I said this to my colleagues, I said, if photosynthesis, in which is, the process in which, you get from light and plants grow, and for example, from carbon dioxide, oxygen is made. From this process, if it stopped 48 hours, what would happen? And he told his other colleagues, professors, what would happen? 48 hours, photosynthesis did not work. He said, the end of the world. Life would be done with. Life would be done with. So when you understand God as being the creator of this universe, that will cause you to be very reflective. One of our great, also scientists who studied at Berkeley, Shahid Chambran, He studied, his brother says, a science that maybe a field at his lifetime, I think plasma physics, something like this, at his lifetime that maybe he said only 10 people in the world knew. He left. He went to Lebanon, and he was helping with the yatim and orphans. And such a time, like during this time where it's Christmas time or holidays, where a lot of people, they leave. I don't know what holidays, maybe it was Christmas, I don't know, but people would leave. The orphans, for example, they didn't have a place to go. So he would stay with them, and maybe many college students would agree with me here that sometimes when you come from a different country, you don't have family, breaks are the worst time for you. Everyone likes them, but you don't like it because you don't have family here. You don't have anyone. So everyone's with their family, you're all alone. So he would spend the time, for example, Christmas break or whatever break it was, with the orphans. He left, his position that he had. And at that time, he was with the orphans, helping the Shia of Lebanon. At that time, the Zionists attacked Lebanon. And they were watching, at that time, they're looking at the tanks that were coming in. And they're telling him and warning him and telling him that, look, let's move, let's go. The tanks are coming in. And he was just waiting and pausing and saying, look at how beautiful the sunset is. Look at the sunset. Look how great Allah created this. Look at the sunset. Like, wait, we're going to be fired at. They're going to get us. Let's leave. And he's thinking of the sunset, meaning that when someone becomes like an arif, someone becomes someone who knows Allah, the creation becomes weak for them. The creation is nothing. They think of Allah. They think of the Creator. Let's recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So that is one type of reflection and knowledge of Sayyidah Fatima, doing hijrah and looking at the creation of Allah. And that is how we should be. And hopefully we are teaching our kids to be this way, to love science, to love knowledge. Because this is what Allah has created. So if you love God, you're going to love knowledge more. Okay? The second part of knowledge that she has is, this is one of the, hadith that they say when Imam Khomeini spoke about Sayyidah Fatima. This is one of the hadith that he said for him that this was very meaningful, and in a way he was amazed by this narration. It's in the book of Al-Kafi, so it's a strong source. This tradition, and then sometimes you're interested, like what do you think, like from our ulama, our scholars, what fadila of Sayyidah Fatima for them or hadith is very important or amazed them, for example. Very interesting to know. The hadith is this: Inna Fatima makathat ba'da Rasulullah 75 yawman. Sayyidah Fatima, in this tradition, 75 days, lived after Rasulullah. وَكَانَ دَخَلَهَا حُزْنٌ شَدِيد وَكَانَ يَأْتِيهَا جِبْرَيْلٌ. 75 days, and Al-Kafi, Jibreel, the angel of revelation, would come to visit Sayyidah Fatima. Jibreel would come. فَيُحْصُنْ عَزَاهَا عَلَى أَبِيهَا. And she would give condolences to Sayyidah Fatima. At a time period where the people of Medina, at that time were not giving her condolences. Her house was attacked multiple times. It's waladat, so I don't want to get into it. But Jibreel would come and give condolences to the daughter of Rasulullah. وَيُطَيِّبْ نَفْسَهَا وَيُخْبِرُهَا عَنْ أَبِيهَا. She would inform, Jibreel would inform Sayyidah Fatima of the whereabouts of her father. Where is Rasulullah right now? In the other world. So she was informed. وَمَكَانِهِ. Where is he? Says, the space where he was. وَيُخْبِرُهَا بِمَا يَكُونُ بَعْدَهَا. And would inform at that time where Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam, what events would happen to her children. فِي ذُرِّيَّتَهَا وَكَانَ عَلِيٌّ يَكْتُبْ ذَلِكَ. Ali alayhi salam would write this. Imam Ali would write this. This became later known as Mushaf Fatima. Does this mean it's another Shia Quran, Mushaf Fatima? This is obviously a false statement. Shias do not have another Quran. We have the same Quran everyone reads. Even the Quran that you have at your homes is published in Saudi Arabia. It's the same Quran. But Mushaf doesn't mean Quran. Mushaf means written. Suhaf Ibrahim wa Musa, for example, Quran says, Suhaf Ibrahim, it's what's written. Mushaf Fatima was a book that later on Imams had. And it was a source of knowledge of the Imams in the future. And sometimes the Imams would look at this and the future events and they say, no, this is not going to happen. This isn't in Mustafa Fatima. If it was in Mustafa, it would happen. Or sometimes you have, for example, other books, the book of Jafr, for example, Jafr. And in this book are the stories and lives of the prophets. How the prophets used to, what they used to say, what they used to do. This would go to the Imams, for example, from the Prophet. So therefore, you have this second, part of Sayyidah Fatima's life is that knowledge that she had from Jibreel, that this causes this title that we have, Muhaddatha, means someone, hadith means sings, that she was spoken to. She was spoken to by Jibreel. So the second part that I would like to talk about Sayyidah Fatima's life and from the traditions is from the Prophet. Inna Allah Azza wa Jal ليغضب لفاطمة لغضب فاطمة ويرضى لرضاها. Allah becomes angered at the anger of Sayyidah Fatima and becomes content and pleased with the pleasure of Sayyidah Fatima. This is something for us that we need to be able to study and analyze. What does it mean that Allah can be angered with someone's anger? Allah can be content with someone's contentment. If somebody is happy, Allah is happy with them. This means that in terms of spirit, we talked about knowledge. In terms of spirit, she has such a high position that whatever she wills, whatever she wants, is what Allah wants. If she becomes angry, Allah is angry. And Tafsir says Allah's anger means wrath. Allah's angry means iqab, punishment. Wherever she is angry, that's exactly Allah would be angry. She is not angry for any reason but Allah. So her will, her irada is the irada of Allah. Her will is the will of Allah. And this is what we have with the Prophet and the Imams, that they reach such a high position that if Rasulullah is unhappy with you, Allah is unhappy with you. If Rasulullah is content with you, Allah is content. Meaning that irada is one. Why? Because they understand the milak for happiness. They understand the criterion for happiness. And they can analyze you and say, yes, this is a good person. This is, for example, a bad person. When you want to and look and to see her rida, her compassion, and you want to analyze her ghadab and anger, this part, these traditions about the spiritual station of Sayyidah Fatima, you see that one of the best ways is through the husband. How did Sayyidah Fatima live according to Imam Ali? There is this very interesting dialogue in one of the books of hadith, which is in the book of Rawdatul Wa'idin. There's a conversation that Imam Ali Sayyidah Fatima have at the end of her holy life. It's towards the end. And she says to Imam Ali salam, Ma ahittani kadiba, that you have never known me to be a liar. You have never known me to be a liar. I was never a liar. Wala kha'ina, and I never a betrayer. Because Fatima Zahra is Siddiqa, someone who is very truthful telling. This is one aspect of her life that she is saying to Imam Ali, and he testifies to this. He bears witness to this. He sees this. He says that I never lied to you, Ali alayhi salam. Question, do people lie in America? Sometimes people that come from other countries or other places, they think that America, they don't lie. Or they think it's illegal to lie, for example. According to studies, the average American, some of the studies, this is in a survey, Americans tell 4 lies a day, average, 4 lies a day. Now, I'm not saying what the rest of the world does or not, but 4 lies a day people say. Who do you think are lied to the most? They say parents. Parents are lied to the most. The kids, at the age of 2. At the age of 4, they can start telling lies. And they can even, fix and form, maybe say it and act in a way that you can't tell they're lying. Like, did you eat this? No. Did you eat this? No. But is this right? And this is one of the important aspects that we want the community and we want to train our children. I remember once in a meeting with the principal of City of Knowledge School, Dr. Sheikhli, she was saying that something that upsets me a lot, that I can't really, it's hard for me to tolerate, is when kids lie. When kids lie. That, other mistakes, yes, they make mistakes. But when in front of you, for example, you did this, they say, no, I didn't. For example, they're lying. Why? Where does that come from, you think? A lot of times you're saying from parents. From the parents, because the parents are doing the same thing. Where do you think the kid is learning to lie from? The parents. They call, for example, say, is he home? Whatever, tell him I'm not home. Tell him I'm not home. So, oh, my dad is not home. I'm learning how to lie. Thank you. The problem with lying is that each lie, these are life lessons from, say, the Fatima, each lie is connected to multiple parts of our lives. 40, 50, maybe different parts of our lives, one lie, one incident. For example, I'm going to give you an example not from one of the brothers here, from myself. Let's just say, one of the beautiful things about Yasin is we're very close to Qamariya. There's a coffee shop here called Qamariya. Let's just say I don't say this, maybe we got it because of Qamariya. I don't know. Is that true or not? I don't know. It's not true. But there's a coffee shop here, and let's say I go to this coffee shop with my friends. Maybe they want to take me out and treat me after this lecture and speech, say, let's go to Qamariya. I go home, and for example, I lie. I go and I say, for example, I didn't go to Qamariya. I was reading dua the whole time. I was crying and worshiping Allah. I go home very late, for example. Were you hanging out with the brothers again? For example, family says, were you hanging out with the brothers again? I say, no. But then the next day I kept saying, wow, like just talking, So, oh, that was good coffee I had. Like, where did you have the coffee? Oh, Qamariya. When did you go to Qamariya? So when you lie, there's so many, that's why they say if someone who lies, his memory is weak, because there's going to be a part where they're going to, at the end, testify to what they did. They're going to say something in their story that doesn't make sense, doesn't match. So the best way, especially in marriage, when say the Fatima is saying, I never lied, she's Siddiqa, and she's higher. Siddiqa is actually a higher status, is that you can live your life in a way that you and your spouse, you can live and learn from, say, the Fatima, Imam Ali in a way that you never lie to one another. You say the truth. For example, I went with the brothers to Qamariya. What's the problem? What's the big deal? For example, we talked about Islam, and I came home, and at this certain time. It's better always to say the truth than to lie. When I begin to lie, then my children begin to lie. Again, one of the bad qualities is allowing and teaching your kids how to lie. Then we have in the same tradition, وَلَا خَالَفْتُكَ مُنْذُ عَاشَرَتْنِي. I have never lied to you, I have never opposed you whenever we have lived together. Whenever you want to go to jihad, to fight, I never said no. Whenever you wanted something from me, I never said no. And this is another beautiful aspect of the life of Sayyidah Fatima with Imam Ali, that she says, I have never disobeyed you. Amir al-Mu'min. Of course, nobody should disobey Imam Ali. He's Amir. He is the Amir. She says, I never opposed you. And what a beautiful marriage you can imagine. This is life lessons for us to listen to one another, us to follow the wants of one another, for us to not lie to one another, not to betray the trust of one another. That is a beautiful life. That is a good life, good marriage. Then Imam Ali alayhi salam says this, says, فَقَالَ alayhi salam, مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ. God forbid. أَنْتِ أَعْلَمُ بِاللَّهِ. Fatima, you know Allah the best. You are the one who knows Allah the best. And this is Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam saying. You're the one who knows Him the best. You have the most arfan. You have the most knowledge of Allah. وَأَبَرُّ. And you are the best one. You are the one who did the most righteousness. Bir. Bir means good. Quran mentions you will not reach bir until you give from what you love. Quran says. What did she love? What is one of the most things that someone loves? When they are married, for example, they have a wedding dress. They have a wedding dress. And a poor person, wedding clothes. A poor person comes and she gives her own wedding clothes. And that is not an example for us because it's great for brides, obviously, to have their. But she is an exception. She gave, everything that she loved. And I take this time also to congratulate the community with the fundraiser that we had, that you spent from what you love as well, from money, from wealth that we have. And we gave this, alhamdulillah, we are a very successful fundraiser, and we're on track, alhamdulillah, to pay. This was why it was so important, was because now we're on track. The first fundraiser we had was that we can, purchase this place. Now the other fundraisers, hopefully we're going to have this every year, is to pay off. Now, for example, 30% ownership, 40, 42, whatever percent. In a few years, hopefully we'll have ownership 100%. And that only comes from learning from Sayyidah Fatima to give from those things that you love. And there we see that the tradition continues and says, وَأَتْقَى, you are the most pious, وَأَكْرَمْ, وَأَشَدْ خَوْفٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ, and you are the one who fears Allah the most. These are statements from Imam Ali alayhi salam, describing his wife, Sayyidah Fatima, having knowledge of God, having this ability to give as much and do birr to this world. Another way to see the position, and we're going to be ending tonight maybe with this, is that sometimes when someone describes an individual, it's their husband, their spouse, they describe them. Now I'm going to share a tradition from Imam Hassan, the son, the first son of Imam Ali, Sayyidah Fatima, that how he describes his mother. He says that in such a night like this, Thursday night is one of the best nights, because it's actually Friday. In Arabic, this is technically Friday. It's considered the night of Friday. And this is the Sayyid, or the best of days, the best of nights, and the week is Friday. And this is the night of it. So therefore, you have in tradition that Imam Hassan alayhi salam says that I saw my mother, fi mihrabiha laylatan jum'ah. I saw my mother in the night of Friday. فَلَمْ تَزَلْ رَاكِعَةً وَسَاجِدَةً حَتَّى انفجر عمود الصبح. I saw her worship Allah. She was in the position of salat, or position of worship. She was continuously doing ruku. She was continuously doing sujood until Fajr. This is Sayyidah Fatima. This is why her love or like of someone becomes the liking of Allah. Her contentment is the contentment of Allah. Because her entire nothing in her heart was as important as the worship of Allah. And the tradition continues, it says that she وَسَمِعْتُهَا, and I heard her say, تَدْعُو لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ وَتُسَمِّيهِمْ, that she would mention by name the believers. For example, this person, this guy, this lady, this sister, Allah help them, Allah, help them out, for example. وَتُكْثِرُ الدُّعَى. So this is the other part that we learn from Sayyidah Fatima, is her knowledge, her spiritual station that she had, and the relationship she had with Imam Ali alayhi salam, because when a person is perfect, they're perfect when it comes to Allah and to society and to the family. May inshallah we are blessed with the shafa'at and intercession of Lady Fatima. We're going to have a little mawludi for Sayyidah Fatima from Brother Ali, inshallah. And keep us in your du'as. And again, we congratulate all the ladies, all the mothers. We recite a salawat first for all the mothers and all the ladies, and also a fatah after we do salawat for all the mothers who have passed away. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.